Hey everybody, welcome to My Weight Live, where we talk to medical experts about weight and health. I'm coming to you today from Baltimore, Maryland, where Melinda Maryniuk and I are here for the American Association of Diabetes Educators Convention. So Melinda has been in the space as a dietitian for over 30 years, I think. I don't want to give away any time frame, but Melinda's an incredible dietitian that we have been so fortunate to work with. She's created so many of our articles and infographics. So Melinda, tell us a little bit about your time as a dietitian, what you enjoy, how you got into the space.
Sure. That's right, Ansley. I've been a dietitian for a long time and also a certified diabetes educator. And the fact of the matter is, I love food. I love to eat, and I want to try to help people find the balance between eating the food they love, the food they enjoy, and their best and optimal health. So that's what most of my energies have been directed to in terms of helping teach students about this, people who are overweight, people who have diabetes. It's been my passion for a long time.
Well, I think one of the things we love about working with you, Melinda, is you do love food and you understand how important it is to enjoy food as part of your life. And I think that realism and that sense of pleasure really comes through in everything you do.
Thank you.
So we're here in Baltimore. Tell me what you've learned here as part of the convention. Has anything stuck out to you as being particularly interesting?
Well, it's a really fabulous meeting, and I will say I'm very proud of the American Association of Diabetes Educators, we'll refer to it as AADE, for putting on a great meeting every year in different parts of the country. It goes for about 3 or 4 days. But a session I just went to was so important, especially for those of us who work with people who are overweight or obese. And it was given by a senior investigator at our National Institutes of Health here in Washington, D.C. His name is Kevin Hall. He's a physician, and 2 points stuck out with me as being so important. And one of them is a reminder that obesity and overweight is a medical condition. I mean, this is not something that is just a weakness of willpower, but we really want to understand being overweight, excess weight as a medical condition, something that has to be taken seriously and medically and really discussed with your doctor. And then the second thing that is important, well, it's actually related to that, is that weight loss and weight maintenance is hard. We are battling a lot of powerful biological responses that decrease our metabolic rate, that increase our appetite. So when you think to yourself, wow, I'm trying, but it's hard, it is hard. And we've got more and more science showing there are competing factors in our body, not in our mind, that make it difficult.
I think that's such an important point, and I feel like slowly that message is getting out. Certainly on our YouTube channel, we have lots of videos of medical experts talking about that. Mm-hmm. So if you are curious to know kind of what does happen in your body when you lose weight, we have several videos of Dr. Arya Sharma, who's a Canadian, really the Canadian expert in excess weight, mm-hmm. talking about why that happens. But it's so wonderful to hear that, that message is being heard by nutritionists, by dietitians, by nurses.
Yes.
Kind of it's really getting out there.
Yes. The other thing he shared that I think was so helpful, we all want to know as doctors, as dietitians, healthcare practitioners, as well as people living with excess weight, what's the best diet? And we're going to talk a lot about this, but
that is actually our topic today is, yes.
Do you want to know his answer?
Yes.
Right away?
Yes. Let's just cut to it here.
All right. He really said there isn't one. And we'll talk more about this, but we all went there wanting to know what this expert was going to tell us about high carb or ketogenic or low carb or fasting, and there is science behind all of them being helpful to overall reduce calories and help you lose some weight. And we'll talk more about this. There's not one way that's going to work for most. In fact, what was very interesting to me, Ansley, was him saying that it's probably more about the what he was calling the social support and your environment that will impact your likelihood to stick with the diet, not the diet itself. So if you have factors in your life, a supportive family, living in a neighborhood where walking is easier, the overall support factors and environmental factors, they may be more related to your success in losing weight and keeping it off than the kind of diet you choose.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. And so we'll definitely talk about that. I would imagine another aspect that determines how successful you are is whether it fits your life, your preferences, and we'll talk about how one might go about evaluating different diets to figure that out.
Great.
One word quickly for everybody here, we're going to kind of use the words diet and eating approach interchangeably. So diet doesn't necessarily mean, 500 calories a day. We're more kind of referring to that term to kind of talk about the foods you eat. So I just want to, we talk a lot about how diets classically don't work because we think about them short term. This is thinking about an eating pattern or eating approach you can stick to forever, to reach that best health. So,
Absolutely.
all right.
Yeah.
So we've all had the friend who says, Whole30 is the way to go. I've lost 30 pounds, and then we try it and it doesn't work. Or, someone else is saying, oh my gosh, no, it's only keto. That's the only thing. Everyone should try it. It will work for everyone. Why is that not true?
Well, I think it's true because people get passionate about what they've tried and what has worked for them. So they think that is the one answer and that it should work for everybody. But that's not true because you might be able to completely avoid a certain category of foods. For example, people who just cut out all dairy or all bread and just have meat. I could never do that.
No.
And so we can't just adopt somebody else's way of eating.
Because we're all different.
I could do it for a couple of days, maybe.
Maybe.
But
I just want to do a quick shout out to everyone who's watching with us live. Debbie from Alberta, hello, and Deborah, hello. They've just said hello to us in the comments, so we're so glad you're here with us. This is our first episode, so you're on the inaugural show here, and we couldn't be happier to have you. So I think you're making such an important point, which is, for some people, dessert, that's not negotiable. We can make it smaller, but we're not going to cut it out.
Right.
Whereas for some people, it's salty foods or snacks. So figuring out what your trigger points is really the key, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that as we think about sort of a healthy eating pattern that will be lower in calories, because if the overall goal is to lose weight, I want to, as a dietitian, help you find a way of eating that you can live with for your whole life. That is good quality foods, that is low in refined carbohydrates, low in added sugars, low in sugar sweetened beverages, and filled with fruits and vegetables. But there may be a time when you want to go on, and Ansley, here's where I might use the word diet, something more short term to really help give you that jump start and try to lose a little bit of weight more quickly. And that's where you might do something a little more drastic, I would say. But that's not something you would be sticking with for a long period of time.
So I want to say hello to Amanda from Saskatchewan. Hello. Melinda, one of the things you had said several months ago when we were talking about this is that when you talk about jumpstart, it's not that you want to, move away from foods forever, but sometimes, saying I'm not going to go, eat this food for a short period of time and sort of reset my mind, that can be helpful to people. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
Yeah, it really can. It really can. And the data and the research holds up on that as well. So, for example, there have been a number of really large studies, not just in the United States, but around the world, that show diets that, for example, use a meal substitute. So if you're drinking your meal like in a shake, for example, for breakfast and for lunch, that automatically controls the calories and it limits the access that you have to food. And you are sort of resetting your mind about, I maybe don't have to eat such a large breakfast or such a large lunch. You're used to eating something more small and fewer calories, and then you can transition to a smaller meal, perhaps just a yogurt and fruit, or in the morning just a small bowl of oatmeal and berries, something like that. So it can help you reset, if you will, your expectations.
Of not 3 huge meals a day, but maybe, scaling back a little bit. And I think actually that's exactly what you're talking about with, some things will work for some people. I know I have some friends who would never want to drink a shake instead of having a meal.
Right.
But for other people, not having to make a choice of what am I going to have for lunch, it's all prepackaged. I don't have to think about it. So it really does depend on what works for you, basically.
Yes. And it's interesting too, as healthcare professionals, Ansley, we've often thought that there is one right way as well. And I've heard a lot of my colleagues say, oh, you should never do fasting, for example, because it's too dangerous and you could get really sick. Or you should never do a very low carbohydrate diet because it's so dangerous and so much fat from all the meat that you might be eating might just give you heart disease from all the cholesterol. Well, the truth is that there's really no danger that we're able to find and document in any of these diets. Now, truth be told, it's probably because very few people can stick with these kinds of more extreme diets for a long period of time, such that those problems might in fact emerge. But if we're talking about 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, if anybody actually can do these things for more than that, I'm amazed and impressed. But I would be trying to move you to a more sustainable, healthy overall meal pattern.
So I want to say hello to two people, Debbie from Alberta and Debbie from Stratford, Ontario. Hello, we are so glad to have you with us. This is so exciting to see people chiming in. So Melinda has written an article for us about trying to figure out what eating approach is right for you. And in that article, you talk about several questions that you should ask yourself. So walk us through what some of those questions are and how we should start thinking about, which approach is right based on who we are as people.
Yeah. So I think that you want to take a look at your overall eating pattern and determine whether you are a 3-meal-a-day person, which is truly ideal, and a couple of snacks. But also identify, are there areas in your usual eating habits where you could maybe improve the quality a little bit? You want to be looking for a big variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean meats. You want to really minimize the processed foods, foods with a lot of added ingredients, because that often comes with a lot of added calories. So I think keeping things as whole and natural as possible is a really, really good place to start in terms of the overall quality of food that you have. It doesn't mean that you can't fit in some processed foods or some fast foods, but that's a really good place to start, is focusing on the quality. The other thing that I would be remiss if I just didn't mention the importance of always making sure you're physically active.
Oh, yes.
And that was one of the things that Dr. Hall, who I was mentioning earlier, was also emphasizing. They've actually done studies looking at the individuals who participated in the Biggest Loser studies,
That's
or
right.
television shows, I should say. And sadly, you've probably heard that many of these individuals regain quite a bit of weight. And the people that regain the least weight are the ones that are the most active. It has less to do with how few calories that you're eating and more to do with how active
you are. Oh, that's so interesting. And I know for a lot of people who struggle with emotional eating, Dr. Arya Sharma also talks about exercise as a way to help you counterbalance some of that emotional eating, that's really the best tool that he's found to help people balance that. So a little shout out for exercise. I think that's so important. I want to jump in here with a couple of questions, just because we're seeing all these, which is so exciting.
Great.
So Amanda says, I've lost 43 pounds on keto. It's been almost 6 months. I'm scared to go back just because of the way I felt before. I do have a lot more anxiety as of lately since losing. It's like my body is like, oh my gosh. So keto is one that we hear a lot of conversation about. And I know several people in our Facebook group had asked questions about keto. What are your feelings about keto, and how should someone figure out if it's the right approach for them?
Yeah. So keto is an example of something that we are changing our views about a little bit, because truthfully, there is a growing body of research that is showing that it does seem to be working for people who choose to follow it and stick with it and find it comfortable and acceptable, and that your family finds it comfortable and acceptable. You don't want to be doing something where your husband or your partner is like, you never eat anything that I like to eat. We don't want, you don't want a long-term diet where this creates conflict.
And friction.
But there are more and more studies, and I have been looking at them recently, that have followed people following a very low carbohydrate diet. And ketogenic, for those of you that don't know, means very, very low in carbohydrate, only about 20 to 50 grams of carb a day. And the studies up to 12 months shows really not harmful effects. If you do have diabetes and you do take medication for your diabetes, it may mean you have to adjust those medicines because you could have a risk for a low blood sugar. I just want to point that out.
And I also think one of the things you point out in the article that's really important is you do want to talk to your doctor about any eating approach you take on, right? Just because you might have other health conditions.
Absolutely.
Keeping your physician in the loop is really critical.
Absolutely. In fact, that was something that came out in another research study. Almost 30% of people following a very low carbohydrate diet didn't tell their doctor because they were afraid of being either shamed or told you shouldn't do this. I think we're all learning that all diets may have a fit for different people. And if that's fitting for you for a period of time, then go with it.
All right, so another diet I keep hearing about, several members of my family are talking about it, is intermittent fasting. So what is intermittent fasting? I think Amanda here says on the page that she's been doing it. And what does the data show about it?
Yeah, so intermittent fasting is another popular thing. The challenge with studying that is that there are many ways to interpret what fasting means. So one style is considered like a day on and a day off, alternate day fasting. So you literally are eating one day, not the next day, eating one day, not. Then there's a modification of that where you, out of a 7-day week, you would eat for 5 days and choose the 2 days, maybe Tuesday and Friday, that you're not going to eat. Or there's an intermittent modified fasting where on the fasting days you might eat just 500 to 600 calories. So am I sounding confusing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things, yeah.
Another kind that's receiving a lot of attention, and in fact I've been looking at this in the field of diabetes, is more short-term time-related fasting. So not eating for an 8-hour block during the day. So people might just choose to eat between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. And in fact, there's something related to your circadian rhythms and the way your body clock works that you may use the calories more efficiently earlier in the morning, and it would not be probably recommended to have your 8-hour window late in the evening and at night because you're not metabolizing and using those calories as quickly. So the question about intermittent fasting, if that's what you want to try and if it's working for you, it will reduce your calories. No question. You will be eating less.
Okay.
People will find that they may be successful, but most people don't want to continue that more than a little while. A few weeks, a few months.
Well, I know Letitia in our Facebook group had asked about intermittent fasting, and I know some people are doing it. They're eating between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. So kind of exactly the hours you were talking about, but just shifting them a little bit later. It's that 8-hour window.
Yeah. So probably the earliest window is the better window.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I might have said that wrong, but it's probably better to eat those calories
earlier in the day.
Than later in the day.
Okay, so that's fantastic. Yeah. That's really, really good to know. Actually, Judy in our Facebook group also asked an interesting question. She said, assuming 1,500 calories a day, which is best? 1, 3 meals a day, 2, 5 small meals a day, or 3, intermittent 16-hour fast? So that's a tough question.
Well, I was going to say, as you've been listening to me, I bet you know the answer.
It depends on you.
Which you would like.
Right.
So if you ask me that, I would say the 5 small meals a day, because I'm one that I need food a lot. And it doesn't need to be a lot of food, but I guess I need food more frequently. Small amounts are fine with me. Other people that I know, and you know yourself, if you are a snacker and get really tempted by food, and even though you say, oh, I know I can have a couple of chips or a couple of berries or whatever, but opening up that bag tempts you to eat more, I wouldn't do the 3 meal and 2 snack thing. Same thing with the fasting. If you get the hangries and feeling like I'm going so long without eating that you just really binge after that, if that doesn't work for you, so you know yourself. Data will not show that one is better than another. It's totally a personal decision. And I just want to add the comment that I made earlier about how social environment may affect it. It also affects your family. If you live by yourself, maybe it doesn't matter. But if you're living with kids, partners, spouses, what they say is going to matter because they're being cranky because you're eating in a way that they don't like. That's not going to help.
Or also if you feel like you're always the one who's being deprived while they enjoy foods that, that's hard too. So it is kind of matching.
It's a group decision sometimes.
Exactly.
I know it's your body, but food is a group activity and it should be enjoyable.
Well, I think one thing that's really important here too is as you're figuring out what's right for you, Melinda has put together a free food journal PDF. And one of the things you might want to consider is keeping track of how you eat and what you eat for a few days, and then looking at the patterns to kind of say, okay, when am I overeating? Is it because I'm eating too often, snacking, or when I go long periods of time not eating, do I overeat?
Yes.
But that's a wonderful tool, and I know we'll put it in the comments.
Yeah.
You can download it, it's all free, but keep track of that food for a few days and see, and how would you suggest?
I can't say enough about that. It feels like a huge burden, but think about doing it only for a couple of days, because the more you understand the factors that trigger you to eat, it may be the quantity of food, it may be the place where you're eating, and there may be some food cues. For example, when you drive to work, and if you're passing always a biscuit place or a place with a bakery that you love, and you find yourself pulling in there for morning coffee and something to bring into work, you might have to just change your driving route. So when you look for patterns and triggers that you can identify on a food journal about where you eat, how much you eat, when you're with a certain friend or family member, if you find yourself eating more, you might want to talk to that friend or family member, because you're identifying like, oh, they're the ones that maybe encourage me to eat more. Have that conversation. Or there's a column on the diary about hunger rating. We want you to eat not when you're famished, but also not when you're stuffed. And so somewhere in that middle range, and identifying how you feel, so you are really just eating when you're moderately hungry. So there's lots of triggers and things to think about in that food diary, and I encourage you to take a look at it.
Absolutely. And we'll do an episode sometime in the next few months talking about, okay, how, here's what I saw, and how do we ask questions and think about, what the right way to approach it is. So 2 things. Hello to Ida. Ida just said she's joined us. We're so glad you're here. And then Sharon Jean actually has a great question. She says, I'm thinking of going vegan, which we know is a super popular diet for a lot of people. What are the best sources of protein to eat, and what can I use instead of an egg for breakfast? So that's putting you on the spot a little bit to be a little creative.
No, that's okay.
But talk about a vegan diet and some of the things to think about with that.
So just to clarify, a classic vegan diet means no animal products whatsoever. So you wouldn't have an egg because that came from an animal, such as you also wouldn't have dairy products or cheese, which someone who's a vegetarian might have products like that. I should just say my son is a vegetarian. He started as a vegan, but found it was a little too hard to do.
I've done that exact same thing as well.
He said, as long as I don't have to kill the animal, like milk and yogurt, it's okay. And then he'll do it. So really the sources of protein for a vegan diet are those plant-based sources. In terms of beans would be an outstanding source, so all kinds, black beans, white beans, chickpeas, garbanzo beans, mung beans, and then combining them with a variety of whole grains, whether that's farro and quinoa and brown rice. And then, surprisingly, most all vegetables, especially starchy vegetables, will have a little bit of protein in it. Not so much in fruits, but by just having a good, well-rounded diet with whole foods, whole grains, vegetables, and lots of beans. Tofu, of course, is an obvious. And then there's a number of soy-based products that might be good for you to have, whether it's tempeh, soy crumbles, and things that can get a little bit more of that protein in your diet. So,
and I will say also, as you think about creative approaches to breakfast, if you're trying to stay clear of dairy, sometimes having more savory breakfasts, things that like eating leftovers from dinner the night before, or things like that, is a good way to kind of get more vegetables into your diet, which we all love, and just to not be reliant on kind of eggs and bacon. Like kind of your typical
It's
healthy.
Interesting. I think in North America, we tend to have these very traditional views, and you would never see, or rarely, I should say, see vegetables on a plate. But as I've worked around the world in nutrition, it's very common to see things like vegetables as options and salads as options on the plate for breakfast. So you could broaden your horizons.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Excellent. So one of the people in our group, and I'm going to do a short commercial announcement for our group. We have a Facebook group. It's an awesome group of people who are getting support and encouragement from one another. It's called Personal Health Revolution. It's a Personal Health Revolution Facebook group, and that really refers to the fact that focusing on health and changing habits really requires a personal health revolution. You have to be really focused on it, and as Melinda said, support is the key for that. So if you're looking for a group of like-minded folks, be sure to check that out. But Donna asked, what's the best diet for someone with rheumatoid or osteoarthritis? And that's a hard one, so what would you say to Donna?
Well, it's also interesting. The answer to that question is also the answer to many questions about what's a good diet for me. So we know with arthritis, for example, there's more inflammation. And so we want those foods that will help reduce inflammation. And here again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's lots of fruits and vegetables. It's brightly colored fruits and vegetables that have a lot of antioxidants that are also tied in with reducing inflammation. It's more whole grains, more lean meats. So it's actually what we would describe, or is often heard of, as a Mediterranean diet, just a high quality diet. There's some theory that people are told with arthritis that you have to avoid nightshade vegetables such as tomatoes or beets or eggplant. But there's really no research that holds that up. And I think that if somebody said to me, but when I eat such and such, I feel worse, I would say, well, then don't eat that.
Pay attention to your body and what you're saying.
Pay attention to your body and see if you're noticing something. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
I want to say hello to Paulette and Jeanette, who are both in, Rockland, Ontario. So glad you're here with us. I want to ask you one more question about diets. And I think for a lot of us, we're not ready to overhaul anything. But we do want to, nudge towards being healthier. And you wrote an article recently for us called the DOT diet, or the do one thing diet. Yeah. Talk about that approach, because I think for a lot of people, that may be the way they're going to see the most success.
Yes.
Tell us what you mean by the DOT diet, which I think you named, actually. I think this is a Melinda coined diet.
DOT, do one thing, because you can feel a little overwhelmed if, for example, you do your food diary, you start thinking about all the things that maybe could be better. If you can identify that one, say, low-hanging fruit, that one change that if you really did that, at least for the next week or two or month, that would make the most difference in reducing calories or getting a better quality of food in your diet, that's what you should focus on instead of trying to do an overhaul. Now, for many people, the DOT, the do one thing, I would have them focus on what they're drinking, because it's just amazing, Ansley, how many calories are consumed in soft drinks, in juices, in smoothies, in
coffee drinks.
Oh my gosh!
Looking at you, Starbucks. We love you. You have a lot of good healthy options too.
That's right. But if we could not consume as many calories, drinking that way, the one exception I would say would be milk. Because there's a lot of nutrients in there. But so that would be one area to do one thing. Another area of do one thing is identify the portion sizes of some of your more common snack foods. So we hear a lot about how healthy nuts are, for example, and peanut butter, super healthy, super high in calorie. So if you find yourself just grabbing that handful of nuts and it's gotten bigger and bigger, count them out. 10 nuts, that's your snack.
I know, especially with almonds, it's just so easy to get that hand-to-mouth motion going, and then you have eaten a lot of calories quickly.
And as much as we've talked about all foods can fit and try to have a balance, for you, if really your downfall or weakness is a certain cookie or a certain chip or whatever it is, maybe it means going completely without for a couple of weeks and just sort of breaking that cycle and saying, wow, I actually didn't die from not having it.
And it is really hard at the beginning, really hard, but then it is so strange to recognize how you do recognize that life moves on.
Right.
And, it gets easier and easier over time.
And then adding it back in that on Sundays I have, 2 Oreo cookies or whatever it is that's your treat. Fit that in.
I think that's really, really wonderful. So I want to have one last comment here from Janet. First of all, thank you everyone who has joined us. This has been such a treat. It's been so exciting. This is our first one. It's been so exciting to see so many comments and so many people saying hello. But Janet says, I really need a jump start to lose a few pounds quick to get going. Having bad knee issues and need a lot of weight off. Just need a good start. So what would you say to Janet? We've talked a lot about kind of getting going, but what would you say to her as something she might consider to get going?
Well, it's hard to give one answer, so let me give a couple of answers.
Yeah, several suggestions.
So I would say first, and I just want to promote the value of a registered dietitian. There are wonderful registered dietitians in Canada, in the United States. So if your health plan, if your health system, if where you live can allow you to see somebody conveniently, they can be a wealth of information and encouragement to really tailor just the right diet.
We should have said that at the beginning, because that is 100% the truth. Yes. Go see someone like Melinda, who's an expert. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But go ahead.
No, so that's one. Secondly, I really think some of these commercial programs like Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig are really solid and really good if you are a kind of person that either wants to work with a group in your community. Weight Watchers offers online supports. They're extremely flexible in how you can participate. There's lots of support and encouragement. There is a cost to those programs, so you've got to be aware of that, but there's also excellent evidence that some of these commercial programs, whether you do it one-on-one, online, or in a group, really are effective. And then I would say the third choice would be to filter through those diets you've heard your friends talk about, whether it's Whole30, whether it's ketogenic, whether it's some kind of fasting. And if one of those really resonates with you, and if you feel you have the support with your family and yourself and your environment, that there are restaurants and foods that you can eat that are close and easy to access, consider doing that for a little while.
And see what happens.
And see how that works.
And number one, and don't beat yourself up no matter what happens, because this is a journey. It takes time.
Right.
You know, there's food everywhere. It's a challenge.
Right.
So
Right.
excellent.
Good.
Well, Melinda, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
taking the time to be here with us. Thank you everyone who listened. We will be back to you on September 12th. We'll be here with Melinda, and she will be talking about cravings. We will also have several other guests. So
Yay.
tune in then.
Good.
We can't wait to see you then. And thank you again.
Welcome.
Thanks, everybody.